My name is Cathy Gutierrez-Gomez, and I'm an associate professor at the University of New Mexico. I am the program coordinator for the Family and Child Studies program, and I work with all the degree programs in that part of the college, but I've been doing mostly teacher preparation. So I work with students that are preparing to be teachers of young children from birth to grade 3.
And what percentage of your students at the university are from the pueblos and reservation areas, would you say?
On any given semester, from the pueblos and the reservations, it could vary, but we've had as many as 50% of the students to 10%. It fluctuates from semester to semester, but we always seem to have some native students from the pueblos or the other reservations.
I'm Annette Anderson, and I am secretary for the Indigenous Institute of the Americas. And Dr. Gomez is one of our advisors and was one of the co-founders of the Indigenous Institute of the Americas when she lived in Dallas, Texas, correct? Yes, so we still are very fortunate to have her guidance and her insight into some of the projects that we're doing with kids. I'm also a chairperson for Santa Fe Days in the Park, which is our annual event that culminates in all of the activities that we develop with children and families throughout the year. And one of the things I brought today to show Dr. Gomez is our concept of the seed protector bags. So a few years ago I had seen a quote that said that 60% of the foods that the world relies on are related to agriculture that indigenous people from the Americas has developed. And I'm not sure that Native kids understand how their ancestors contributed to the health and well-being of the entire planet. I think we're well aware of how how our foods have helped people in the Americas, but not necessarily the planet. Then the other thing that other item I read was that I believe 93% of our heirloom seeds have been lost within the last 80 years. And
could you explain what that means?
Yes.
That the seeds have been lost?
Right. So basically what it means is that most of our foods in recent years have been planted and developed by major corporations based on many times just the taste and the texture, the color of items, have found more popularity. So when you think about, let's just use corn for example. Yellow corn, bantam corn was one of the seeds that was planted on a regular basis, many years ago, and people were attracted to yellow corn, and so over time they developed GMO type of corns, genetically modified versions of corn that would be more resistant to bugs and funguses and things like that. So what happened is over time, if you're not planting seeds from all of the various plants that are available, then there are fewer and fewer seeds that can germinate. And over time, you lose forever these seeds. And so in particular, for Native people, our seeds are equivalent to our children, and they are a key component of our ceremonies, of our life ways, planting, agriculture, when things are harvested, when we eat them. All of those are ceremonial, throughout the year. And so, in particular, our seeds for our culture are very critical to our life ways. And so what we've been trying to do with our children is not only help them appreciate how Native people have developed agriculture over centuries, but how the seeds that we have left are critical to our future of our culture. And so related to that has to do with other plant forms, and I hope I get this correct too. I'm hoping that our consultant can look this up. But we have discovered 13% of the plants that are on our planet. Only 13%. And we have those named and we understand where they're grown, but all the rest of the plants, 7%. Is that correct? Is my math correct? We've never discovered yet.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
That's pretty amazing.
it is amazing, especially when you think about medicine. So for our kids, we want them to understand, our belief is, I would say most people believe that Creator put a plant on the planet for every illness that humans have. And if we've only discovered 13% of those plants, and we've only discovered even part of them in terms of their medicine properties, then we have a whole slew of other plants we haven't even researched and investigated yet that could contribute toward the health of the world. But if we lose those plants, if we lose our heirloom seeds, because food is medicine too, right? So a bean has protein in it, it has amino acids. Every bean has a slightly different color and property, which means that it has some kind of a different chemical input. So young children, little children in particular, really love seeds. They love to touch them, they love to play with them. I mean, we're sitting here playing and we're twisting and we're twirling them. And so it occurred to me that our children will probably be the protectors of our seeds. And so we started making these seed protector bags, I believe it was about 7 years ago. And over the course of 7 years, we've handed out 5,500 seed bags. And every year we kind of pick a different seed that we want children to protect. And so what we do is we let the kids pick, so let's pretend like this year's beans. And so we let the kids pick the beans and put it in their seed protector bags. And we say to the kids, you are going to be a seed protector. If you take this home, I want you to take this home, I want you to put it in a safe place. Because one day, the grown-ups may be walking around saying, oh, no, we don't have, there's no more white beans left. And because you took care of these beans your whole life, these beans are in your closet. And you are the person who comes forward and says, I have those beans, and you become that seed protector. And this becomes important. You remember the story of the blue corn, where the Mimosine Foundation or Mimosine Institute, the Hopi corn in one season all got a blight or some kind of a fungus. And if our kids had the blue corn seeds, the Hopi could have restarted their crops based on the DNA from these. One day, 20 years from now, they might be able to take one bean, pull the DNA off of it, and reproduce these beans. So that's why we call these the seed protector bags. This is what's interesting. So when we give the kids the bags and we explain to them that by taking this home, they become the seed protectors, usually the first thing the grown-ups ask is, can we plant it? Mm-hmm. And our response is, of course you could plant it, but do you want to? If you plant it and you don't take care of it and you don't know how to save the seeds from that plant, that seed's lost forever. You always want to save half of your seeds, half eat and half save for the next crop, right? But not everybody knows that. The other thing is some seeds are so important to be careful where you plant them because of seed sovereignty. So, for example, on our pueblos, if our pueblos are planting corn nearby a corporation that has a different kind of corn, maybe GMO corn, they can test the DNA that has gone through the wind. The pollen carries the DNA of that seed. And we've had stories of major corporations basically charging our people for accidentally growing corn. So you have to be careful if you give someone corn seed that they not plant that within at least a mile of any other corn, or that corn is no longer pure. That corn will be contaminated with somebody else's corn. So there's a lot, seeds are so important in a lot of different ways. And, you know, like we like to teach kids about how the three sisters, you know, the corn, beans, and squash. I didn't know that there was a fourth sister in the Southwest. It's called the bee plant, the bee pollen plant. And you plant it with your three sisters garden to attract pollination, the bees to come. And, you know, in our part of the country, it might be sunflowers, so that the sunflower seed goes to the birds, right? So even though those three seeds are important to our culture, depending on the region that you're in, as to what kind you can grow, and, you know, altitude and your growing season and all that. So every seed has its special properties. And so that's what this is. These are our seed protector bags. And when you think about 5,500 kids in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, that's awesome. A pretty significant thing. And we now have some kids that were little, like 5 or 6, and they'll come to us at the powwows, and they're teenagers now. We don't even recognize them, and they'll say, I still have they call me the seed lady, I still have my seed bag that you gave me, right? Yeah.
So I know a couple of years ago you started using this turtle.
Yes.
And so I know there's a story behind that, right?
Right. Oh, there's always a story. So, I don't know if you can see this. This is just a little stamp. But a couple of years ago, we started the phrase Cherish Turtle Island. And some of our stories have to do with the turtle. Every tribe kind of has different turtle stories. Tortoises and turtles are everywhere. In particular, the concept that the Americas related to the turtle, that the turtle basically put earth on its back, and so we wouldn't be here today. That, you know, that's where the turtle carries us. And so when we say cherish Turtle Island, it means cherish your environment, cherish all the people in our environment, look out for one another, those kind of things. And so the turtle has been actually a pretty significant theme for us for the past couple of years. What we didn't know is that turtles are what they call a keystone species. And when you think about the Keystone Pipeline, it's very interesting that it's called the Keystone Pipeline. You know, when we think about water protectors in our culture, but a keystone species in a simplistic form means that if the environment is doing well, there will be turtles, and the turtles will be doing well. But the turtle is our indicator of how an environment is doing. So if the turtles are dying, or the turtles can't be found, or they're moving, or they're shifting, or whatever, they're the first indicator that there's a problem in our environment. I just thought that was kind of interesting. I had no idea that they were such
pay attention to the turtles.
Yes.
And their well-being.
Exactly. Right. What I thought was really interesting was those number of plants.
Yeah.
You know, and that was within, I think, the last 300 or 700 years or something. It was the last 300 years we've only discovered 13% of the plants. Think how much more we have to go. So we need all these children. If we're going to get the rest of these plants examined, we got to get kids interested in our plants again, right? Not our video games.
So getting them interested in the seeds will get them interested in the plants.
Exactly. Plus we know kids like dirt. Kids like water. They like to play in dirt and water. They like to play with seeds. If you let them play with the seeds, they love to play with seeds. And seeds also, there's so many pretty colors and different sizes and shapes, and helping kids. The first step, we have a Beanie Baby game. And what we do is we'll pick about 13 different kinds of heirloom beans, and we'll glue them on a card. So pretend like these are all different kinds. And we'll put funny little cartoon character beans, you know, with like little faces and what have you. And then for babies, little babies, we'll have them match the bean. Okay? For big kids, we'll give them a blank card, and they have to pick what bean they think is a cranberry bean, what bean is an orca bean, which bean is a scarlet runner bean, what's a Christmas lima bean. And then when they're all done and they think they got it, then we show them the card that has the glued on beans.
Wow.
Yeah. Then when they get a little bigger is when they have to learn the difference between a corn, a squash, and a bean seed. That's a different way of sorting, right? And then
And then give them a chance too, and ask them to come up with their own games, and
right.
I'm sure they can come up with a few games.
One thing we've learned, and this is probably not true of every child, but we learned that boys in particular like to smell things. They like to sniff our displays and stuff. So they like it when the plants have already grown and maybe you've cut them off, and like they can smell the sweetgrass and they can smell a chili, pod or something like that. But what girls seem to like to do is they like to do just like what we're doing. They like to touch it and feel it. And one of the favorite seeds that little bitty girls seem to like is amaranth. Amaranth seed is really tiny, like itty bitty, almost like an itty bitty ant. And they're, I don't even know what they feel when they feel it, but they like to, and that's one of the seeds we lose all the time because we have so many hands in our bowls that the seeds just fly.
Because they're so tiny.
So tiny, yes. Yes, but that's a favorite of the little girls, is they like to touch it and feel it, and boys will be like this. They want to sniff it.
That makes sense.
They want to sniff it. So we go around throughout, really anywhere anyone asks us, we'll bring big displays of all of our seeds and our dried plants, and typically every year I'll pick about 3 plants that we want to focus on. This year was witch hazel, arnica, and sweetgrass. And then we talk about the medicine properties, or how it was used, where it grows in the United States.
Well, why did you pick those?
Because people are starting for sure to see witch hazel and arnica on the grocery store shelf.
Okay.
And they think it's a new thing. But we've used it as a culture for centuries. So I try to pick something that people think, oh, did you hear about this stuff that's good for like bruises and stuff? It's called arnica. Most times they don't know it's a plant. They think arnica is the brand name. And witch hazel, for our skin and things like that. People don't realize witch hazel is an anti-bacterial agent, and you can actually use it for cleaning your dishes and cleaning your sinks and things like that. But it also helps with pimples. And so a lot of teenagers have bought witch hazel products, not realizing that it's a plant that grows in the Americas. And you can harvest it yourself and make your own witch hazel product. So I try to pick things that either I can find an equivalent on the shelf in a grocery store, or something that I can show a direct relationship to something they deal with in current life, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does.
The newest activity I tried to do, I'm working on it, is I'm trying to talk with now the preteen kids about drug and alcohol abuse, and how does our connection with our plants relate to drug and alcohol prevention. And so from a cultural standpoint, if we're trying to raise children more traditional, bring them back to our roots, then if every plant is precious, and if every plant was put on this earth as a medicine, then we shouldn't use any plant recreationally. You can use it for medicinal purposes, so that would include tobacco, marijuana, all the plants that go into alcohol, the poppy seed that has to do with our heroin and our opiates, our cacao beans, and that have to do with cocaine and peyote, exactly. And so all of those have their purposes, whether it's pain killing, relaxation, or what have you, but they were not meant to be used in any way on a daily basis. And they're to be used in the hands of people who know how to use them, which would be our medicine people. And so if we raise our children right to look at all plants in that way, then it might help them to have second thoughts about what they read on the internet or what they hear word of mouth between kid to kid. Might think at least differently about how they would use those things if they're going to use them.
That would be good information to share with them.
It's hard when the parents don't know that stuff either.
So,
right.
Parent education.
Parent education is a
along
good
with-
beginning. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Why do you think I separated things like that?
Is it because they're all pruny and they got a funny? They have a certain dip in them.
And these two?
I think it's the color. I think the color.
They're the lightest of all the...
You could do it from biggest to smallest and it would be very hard. I mean, think about what each child
It would get harder and harder, yeah.
Because they're closer and closer. So there's a lot you can do with seeds. So what do you think of that, Dr. Gomez?
I love it. I think there's so many possibilities for learning and for the children and for stirring up their creative thinking and getting them more and more interested in that and taking care of the seeds and thinking about our foods and how this impacts foods for the future.
Right.
So maybe we'll get some of our kids interested enough so that they become, environmentalists or go into some profession that will help us in some way.
Here's another thing that I forgot to mention. If I hand this to you and I said, this is a seed, okay? But if I hand this one to you and I say, this is a baby, I want you to take care of that baby for me. How is that different?
I become a lot more invested in this.
Because it's a baby. And we got to take care of our babies. And we forget that seeds are babies, baby plants. And so that's why we have the Beanie Baby game. I forgot to mention why I came up with the concept of the baby. And so I talk about, I don't actually use the word seeds. This is a bean baby, you got a corn baby, a squash baby. And so if we take care of our babies, just like when you're little, and somebody takes care of you.
Because someday we're going to need them.
We gotta
and they're going to help take care of us.
That's right. Got to give them food and water and a house to put their feet in, and
I like that concept.
Yes, there you go. All right, that's enough. We did good.
Great.
Where's Greg Gomez? We did a better video than. Let's ask Auntie Cathy.